What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I'm back for yet another episode of Under the Radar. I thought it was going to be a bigger episode, but I decided I need to kind of cut down on the amount of stuff to talk about, otherwise I feel like I would be overbloating my brain with so much stuff. So I decided to cut down this episode back down to what I had before, which was 4 albums. So I went ahead and checked out 4 different albums for this episode, all vastly different styles of hard rock and metal, and I figured why don't I get started with the doom metal one, and that is an album from Deathbell called A Nocturnal Crossing. So this is my first time ever really hearing about this band Deathbell, and this is their second full-length album. They are a psychedelic stoner doom metal band that's from France, and this is my first time checking out their stuff, and I have to say, I feel like it's a little more stoner and classic metal than it is doom. There's plenty of doom riffs and doom speeds on this album, but there's a little bit more like up-tempo stuff here on this album that kind of fits along the lines of like stoner metal or classic metal. There's some great melodies, some solid heavy riffs on here. The drum performance was fantastic, and even the production. The thing that stood out to me about this album, the production, it kind of felt, it was almost like a mixture of a modern sound, but with a mix that sounded like it came out of late 80s, early 90s doom or stoner metal music to kind of give it like an old school feel to it. And that was one of the things I really enjoyed about this album. Plus the vocalist Lauren, she shows that she can provide some like psychedelic atmosphere with her voice, and it certainly enhanced the trippiness that this album was able to showcase. And for those reasons, although I wasn't like fully engaged in it personally, mostly because sometimes the songs felt like they did kind of drag on a little bit. Granted, when it's stoner, psychedelic, doom, stoner metal, whatever, sometimes moments do feel like they kind of drag on a little bit just to kind of go long for the sake of being long. And for those reasons, I give this album an 8 out of 10. It's a really solid album from a French stoner doom band that definitely likes to experiment a little bit with atmosphere and classic metal tropes, and that's why I give it an 8 out of 10. Following that, Following that, we get into one I thought I was going to give a full review to, but I decided to put it on Under the Radar for this week, and that is the new album from HammerFall with Hammer of Dawn. Of course, HammerFall, they're a long-standing Swedish traditional heavy/power metal band that's been going strong since the mid-90s, and I've heard a couple of their albums, or at least songs, maybe not albums, but songs in the past, and I gave this album a listen, and right off the bat, I love the production on this album. After all, it was produced by Fredrik Nordstrom, who's a pioneer of like the Swedish metal sound, particularly melodic death metal. But I like how Fredrik kind of gave this album a little bit more balls and a little bit more heaviness for a power metal band. There are plenty of heavy riffs on this album, plenty of great like neoclassical moments, or like a lot of shred like you would get in quite a lot of power metal. And the vocals, definitely more on that higher register like you would expect from a power metal band. But I do love how they pay attention to classic heavy metal bands like Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, and Accept when it came to how they put these songs together, and how some of the riffs kind of harken back a little bit to like the golden age of those bands in the 80s with Priest, Maiden, and Accept. And I love how it's like a good balance between uplifting and like also some thought-provoking stuff you get, or stuff to make you think about things here. Also, the album cover is pretty cool. It's basically like a Viking just getting ready to just hammer down on everything. So, overall with this album, yeah, I really enjoyed the riffage the production on here. Vocals do get a little bit hokey for my taste, but that's not really a big problem. After all, it is power metal. It's bound to be expected at times. And for those reasons, I give this album an 8.5 out of 10. I thought it was a little bit better than Deathbell. I enjoyed it for the most part. I really liked the production, that heaviness, but still sticking to some great melodies. And what more can I say about this album? Moving on to the next one, and this is actually the first time me checking out this band, Deathhammer, and their album Electric Warfare. So yeah, Deathhammer, yeah, this is my first time actually listening to this band, and from what I've heard, they're like a blackened thrash speed metal band out of Norway. Kind of similar to bands like Aura Noir and such, but whenever I listen to this album, I got a ton of echoes of like early German thrash, like early Sodom and early Destruction, a little bit of early Creator, like the early parts of the big three of the German thrash bands, Creator, Sodom, and Destruction. Vocally, it kind of sits in like this triple threat middle ground between Tom Angel Ripper from Sodom, Schmear from Destruction, and the more gravelly tone kind of reminds me a little bit of Nocturnal Culto's more gravelly vocals on, like, say, Arctic Thunder or Old Star even. So vocally, it's kind of like in that almost black metal, German thrash style. Musically speaking, it goes super fast in the thrash department, but there's a lot of great speed metal moments that kind of remind me of like modern black and thrash or black and speed bands like Midnight and Hell Ripper, and even little bit of like Nocturnal Graves from earlier in the year. So yeah, it's like riffage. There's a lot of riffs, again, that kind of harkens back to the days of German thrash. And a little bit of Venom. Like, there was a couple of moments here where I thought, am I listening to, like, the song Bloodlust by Venom? But top to bottom, this was some fantastic stuff. Of course, the only minor complaint I could have is that while it does sound a little too retro for my... or not for my taste, but it does have a little bit more retro influence than I'm used to with black and thrash, but that's not always a bad thing. In fact, I actually kind of think it works a little bit for Deathhammer, and for those reasons, I give this album a 9 out of 10. It's very raw as well, but I thought this was a hell of an album from a Norwegian black and speed thrash band. I actually look forward to hearing what they got next for another album, because I like this more than I thought I would. And now for the last one, and I even said to myself, even though this is a huge band, the biggest band out of everything I have reviewed so far this year, I snuck it into Under the Radar this week just because I've heard some good things about it, and that is Rock Believer by the Scorpions. Don't need to get into too much with the Scorpions. We all know who they are, one of the classic bands in classic metal and hard rock in the 70s and 80s. And they just continue to pump out music, which I totally respect them for. After all, they've been around since technically 1965 and have been putting out albums since the early to mid-70s. And yeah, you got a couple of old-timers in there with Klaus Meine and Rudolf Schenker, who are still out there, in the case of Klaus, just belting his voice, and then Rudolf coming up with some really cool riffs. Here on this album, this is the first one with Mickey D, formerly of Motorhead and King Diamond, on drums, so it's nice to see Mickey D found a new home after Lemmy passed away at the end of 2015. And now he's in another huge band. So he's been in 3 completely different big bands. King Diamond, Merciful Fate, and now... or not Merciful Fate. Motorhead and the Scorpions. But of course, whenever I was listening to this a little bit ago... yeah, the production definitely still sounds modern, but it has a spirit of like their 80s run. And even lyrically speaking, and like the structures felt like something you would hear on like Love Drive or Animal Magnetism a little bit. But the one song on this album that really stood out to me was Seventh Son. That song kind of was like a darker sounding Blackout, like China White, actually. Because that song, China White, it is slow, it is heavy. This song was kind of like China White in the tempo, but a little bit darker and a little more sinister sounding, even though lyrically it's nowhere close. Like, pretty much this is one of the more upbeat albums I've heard so far, and yeah, it can get a little cheesy, and that was kind of the thing I saw a lot of people saying about this album, and I can agree it does get a little cheesy and hokey, but it's the Scorpions. They kind of invented that kind of style of lyrics and tropes within the music, so they kind of get a pass for that because they kind of started that. And it works because they know how to really put a smile on your face. But because of that cheesiness, and also I thought the album was a little bit bloated, especially the limited edition with the bonus tracks. It did feel a little bit bloated, but I enjoyed it from top to bottom. There was some catchy riffs, some cool vocal melodies, and for that I give it an 8 out of 10. It sounds like classic Scorpions, but in the modern day, and yeah, the Scorpions showed they can still do it, but who knows if this is it for them, or they're going to make another album. Who knows? But the future remains untold, I feel, for the Scorpions. Will they hang it up, or are they going to keep going? But anyways, what did you guys think of all these albums that I brought up on this week's Under the Radar? Let me know in the comments section below. And actually, a real quick update on the band versus band video. I am hoping I can get those videos out next week, or at the end of this week, even at the earliest. And I'm currently running a poll on the community tab of my YouTube page. You guys get to vote. What band do you want me to do a discography ranking for? It's been a few months since I've done a discography ranking for a band, and I wanted to leave it up to you guys. So your choices are Slayer, Tool, Dark Throne, Morbid Angel, or Iron Maiden. Go to the community tab of my YouTube page and vote, and the votes will continue until this Friday. And then I will choose, in the end, whoever got the most votes will be the one to get the discography ranking. Although that video probably won't be out until another week or two, so there's that for you. But anyways, thank you guys for watching this video. Horns high, and I will see you soon. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing ShitTech's brand new Shit Can. This revolutionary on-the-go product will be the biggest savior of your life. Say you're at a hotel that doesn't have any toilets, or you're stranded out in the middle of nowhere as your car breaks down, you can take the ShitTech Shit Can with you if you need to take a dump, piss, or puke whenever you need to.
Yep, you can never go wrong with GIF media files.
You are aware it's pronounced GIF, right?
Oh no, silly, this is a GIF.
Damn it, we don't even have spam in here! Whoa!